The wind moved differently after he left. It didn't whisper the way it used to when it slipped through the cracks in the wood siding. It howled, low and long, like it was mourning something it couldn't quite name. The silence in the house had weight now. Not just an absence of noise, but a pressing, tangible kind of stillness that settled into the walls and floorboards. Every creak of the old farmhouse sounded louder, every echo stretched longer. The air smelled like old dust and drying wood, and sometimes, when the sunlight passed through the kitchen window just right, it illuminated the floating particles in the air, like time had stopped moving forward and simply settled in place. I'd gotten used to the rhythms of two people. 2 mugs in the sink, 2 chairs at the table, 2 boots by the door. After he left, nothing looked right. 1 mug felt abandoned. 1 chair felt too empty. His coat still hung on the wall hook, as though some part of him might walk back in and slide into it without saying a word. Even the animals noticed. The dog paced more than usual, ears twitching at sounds that never turned into footsteps. The horses in the barn whinnied more often at night, restless like they sensed a shift in the air too. The house sat at the edge of a field, surrounded by frost-laced grass and black pines. We used to joke it was the loneliest patch of land in the county, and now the joke landed differently. It wasn't just isolated, it was hollow. I'd spend hours watching the trees sway or the crows circle overhead, waiting for something I couldn't name. The land was tired, the soil damp with early winter and silence. When the cold came early that year, it felt like a punishment, as if the weather, too, had turned on me. There was something about being alone out here that felt deeper than just solitude. It was a conversation with memory. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee and pipe smoke, even though neither had been brewed or lit in weeks. His tools hung in the shed in the same place he left them, the worn handle of his favorite hammer still warm from the sun, untouched. I couldn't bring myself to move them. Moving things felt too final, like letting go. Nights were the hardest. The darkness came fast, slipping in under the door like a thief. The radio only worked half the time, and the old records skipped more than they played. I found myself talking out loud sometimes, to the stove, to the walls, to the empty chair across from mine. Not because I thought anyone would answer, but because silence was too thick to swallow whole. Some people say loneliness is loud, but out here, it was quiet, and that was worse. It was the second week of November when I first saw him. The morning fog had barely lifted from the fields, and the frost still clung to the barn roof like a second skin. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one ever came by this far out unless they meant to. At first, I thought the movement in the barn was just the wind rattling the door again, or maybe the horses growing restless. But when I stepped inside, the air shifted, warmer somehow, as if someone had been breathing in it. He stood by the far stall, half in shadow, wearing a jacket too thin for the cold and a look that said he hadn't slept in days. His eyes met mine, not with fear, but with something slower, more cautious, like he'd forgotten what it was like to be seen. I should have screamed or grabbed the shotgun or demanded answers. But I didn't. He didn't look dangerous, just tired. Like the barn was the first still place he'd found in a long while. He told me his name was Eli. His voice was rough, like gravel in a dry creek bed, and he kept rubbing at his hands like he couldn't get the cold out of them. I asked him what he was doing there, and he said, "Didn't mean to stay, just needed somewhere the wind didn't cut through." Something about the way he said it made me pause. There wasn't desperation in his voice, just a quiet plea, not to be chased off. I let him stay the night, gave him a blanket, a mason jar of stew, and a space near the heat lamp in the tack room. He didn't ask for more, didn't even meet my eyes as I handed him the food. The next morning, he was still there, stacking old hay bales without being told, mending the hinge on the stall door like it was his job to fix the broken things. He never asked questions, never pried. He worked and listened and kept his stories, buried under layers of silence. Over the next few days, something unspoken passed between us. He never stepped inside the house, and I never asked him to. But every day, I found some small change in the barn, a swept floor, a leak patched, tools sharpened and put in place. It felt like he was rebuilding something, not just around him, but inside himself. And maybe, in a way, so was I. Sometimes we'd sit on opposite ends of the hayloft when the sun was low, drinking coffee in silence. The quiet between us was different than the one I lived with in the house. This silence didn't ache. It rested. He didn't try to explain who he was, and I didn't try to guess. That mutual permission, to simply be, without fixing or naming, felt like a kind of grace. The days fell into a rhythm that asked for nothing but presence. I'd bring him a thermos of coffee each morning, set it on the feed barrel without a word, and he'd nod from wherever he was working, patching a fence line, oiling the old tack, or sitting with one of the mares who had started to favor him. He never looked like he was trying to stay, but somehow he never really left. He moved like someone used to disappearing, but the land held him, the barn held him. Maybe I did too, in some quiet way. There was one afternoon, heavy clouds, sky the color of steel wool, when I found him in the loft, sitting by the open window with a pencil and a little weathered notebook. He didn't hide it. He didn't speak. I sat a few feet away on a bale, wrapped in an old quilt, and we both watched the rain start its slow tap across the tin roof. When he handed me the notebook, the page wasn't full of writing, just small sketches. A horse's eye, a broken gate, a woman's hand, open-palmed. They weren't polished. They were tender, careful. I handed the notebook back without saying anything. I didn't need to. He began teaching me how to mend things I'd been ignoring. The cranky water pump. The old saddle I thought was beyond repair. We didn't talk much while we worked, but I watched the way his hands moved. Not rushed, not rough, like he believed even the cracked and rusted had a right to be made whole again. That belief settled somewhere deep in me. It made me want to care for the things I had stopped seeing. Once, during a late freeze, the generator gave out and we lost power in the house. I lit every candle I had and went to check the barn. He'd already brought the horses close, laid down extra bedding, hung blankets on the drafty wall. When I asked how he knew to do all that, he shrugged. You look after what looks after you. I didn't know if he meant the animals or the barn, or something else entirely. There were nights I couldn't sleep, and I'd walk the edge of the field, wrapped in my coat, eyes tracking the stars. More than once, I saw his shadow, near the fence line too. We never walked together, but our footprints were side by side in the morning frost. There was a gentleness in that, a quiet witnessing. I didn't ask how long he'd stay. He didn't ask why I hadn't left either. We didn't need promises or reasons, just the hum of chores done together, the warmth of firewood stacked before the snow. The stillness of two people who had survived different storms and somehow ended up in the same quiet clearing. Sometimes healing didn't look like joy or triumph. Sometimes it looked like breathing in peace where you expected to find only cold.